my perspective, I recognize two teachings, not churches, not dissidents, two teachings that are out there in Adventism that aren't the message of the hour, though the people that are involved with those messages believe they are the message of the hour. And what I was emphasizing is that based upon inspiration, if you're going to try to determine what the message of the hour is, it's going to be a message that emphasizes a close of probation, a closed-door message, and neither one of those messages do. And I'm familiar with them. Because Sister White says, pardon me? State the question. Why is this not openly taught in Adventism? It's not openly taught in Adventism because we are informed in inspiration. The Great Controversy says very plainly that every reform movement has prefigured and paralleled the final reform movement. The reform movement, when the 144,000 are raised up, it's a perfect pattern to the Millerite history, which is a perfect pattern to the history of Christ, which is a perfect pattern to the history of Moses, which is a perfect pattern to the history of Elijah, which is a perfect pattern to the history of Noah. Every reform movement in the Scriptures, they're identical. They're identical. I know you guys, if you haven't thought that before, you don't believe it, but they're identical. Okay, we're waiting for, I'm getting to your answer. We're waiting for the angel of Revelation 18 to come down, but the angel of Revelation 18 in the Millerite history was the angel of Revelation 10 that came down. And in the history of Christ, it was the dove that came down in his baptism. And in the history of Moses, it was Christ coming down to confront him with circumcision, which is a type of baptism. They're all the same. Okay? So, in each of those histories, there has been a group of people that the Lord had ordained to carry the message. And in each of those histories, that group of people never did their job. Okay? The Lord would have used the Sanhedrin when he came among men. But the Sanhedrin participated in his crucifixion. He had to choose men from the common walks of life. He had to choose fishermen and tax collectors and publicans. In the Millerite history, he had to choose William Miller, a deist, a farmer. Even though there were many Protestant pastors available, they wouldn't take up the work. In every one of those histories, the Lord has had to choose people outside of the structure that was ordained to do the work. Simply because history is repeating to the very letter. No. But sister, you're saying the same thing. I have traveled the entire world teaching this to Adventism, that you have the identical response you find everywhere in Adventism around the world. We're sleeping. We're Laodiceans. We don't know what our foundational truths are. We don't know what these are. Okay? When Christ came, the Pharisees thought they were defending the law of God. Okay? But Christ was the law of God. The law of God was the foundation of ancient Israel. They thought they were defending the foundation of Israel, and they were crucifying the foundation of Israel. Here we are at the end of modern Israel, and people don't know what the foundations are anymore. And if you try to tell them these truths, they crucify you. They crucify you. We're Laodiceans, all right? We've been put to sleep. You can show that we're the fourth generation of Adventism, and I'm not talking about 70 years, 70 years, 70 years, or 40 years, 4 times. I'm talking about the fourth generation prophetically. The book of Joel is fulfilled in the latter rain in our history, and the book of Joel identifies that the book of Joel is fulfilled in the fourth generation. Okay, the final generation. This is when the cup of iniquity is full in the Bible. The Lord visited the iniquity of the fathers unto the third and fourth generation. So in the fourth generation, we don't know what the third generation believed, and the third generation didn't know what the second generation believed, and the second generation didn't know what the first generation believed. So we're so far removed from the beginning of Adventism that we just don't know much about what's going on at all anymore. Okay? So when you come to this point in history, my wife wants me to tell you about William Miller's dream. I don't know if I have the time to tell you about William Miller's dream. But William Miller's dream answers your question. William Miller is the one the Lord used to organize and proclaim these truths, and he has a dream that's noted in early writings where he has a casket, which is the Bible. It has some jewels in it. He calls everyone to come in and see it. He tells us the dimension of the casket, right? It's 6 times 6 times 10, which works to 360, which is identifying the year-day principle that William Miller used. The casket is the Bible. The jewels are these truths. And once he puts it on a table for everyone to come to see, men and women start coming in. They start handling the jewels and throwing them on the floor and then bringing in rubbish and trash and covering them up until they're lost sight of, and William Miller begins to cry. And when he begins to cry, the dirt brush man comes in and begins to sweep the rubbish out the window. And you can show that that dream is identifying the history of Adventism from when the jewels were put in the box until the dirt brush man comes in 1989 with the collapse of the Soviet Union and begins to regather the jewels, and he throws them into a box that's much bigger than the original box, which means that now we have the Bible and the Spirit of prophecy. And these jewels shine 10 times brighter than they were before. So what I'm saying is, the loss of our foundational truths is identified in other places besides William Miller's dream. It's a subject of prophecy. It happens. Jeremiah 6:16 says, "Stand ye in the ways and see. Stand ye in Adventism and look around." Go to Jeremiah 6:16. All the prophets are speaking about the end of the world, and they're talking about the fact that we have to return to the foundational truths. And in verse 16 it says, "Thus saith the Lord, stand ye in the ways, and see, and ask for the old paths, where is the good way, and walk therein, and ye shall find rest for your souls." But they said, "We will not walk therein." Sister White quotes Jeremiah 6:16 and says those old paths represent the truth on this chart. This is the old path. At the end of the world, we're supposed to stand in Adventism and look around at all the various ways in Adventism and see, and we're supposed to select the old paths and walk therein. And if you walk in the old paths, what will you find? Rest for your souls. Now notice Isaiah 28. Go to Isaiah 28 so that we can understand what rest is. Isaiah 28, verse 12. And because you brought this question up, go to verse 11 first. "For with stammering lips and another tongue will he speak to this people." Okay? He has to raise up other men to give this message at the end. With men with stammering lips and another tongue. Men that aren't trained to be pastors. That's what's being addressed here in verse 11. But notice verse 12. "To whom he said, This is the rest wherewith you may cause the weary to rest, and this is the refreshing, yet they would not hear." Okay, last night we quoted from Great Controversy 6:11, where Sister White says the refreshing is the latter rain. The rest is the refreshing. It's a message they would not hear. Yet they would not hear the refreshing. They would not hear the latter rain message. So in Jeremiah 6:16 it says, "Stand ye in Adventism and look and see, and choose the old path, and if you walk in the old path, you'll find rest. You'll find refreshing. You'll find the latter rain." But there's a group in Adventism that says, "We will not walk therein." And here in Isaiah 28 it says, "We will not listen to this message." In 1888, the Lord tried to bring the latter rain message. Was it received? When the latter rain message comes, brothers and sisters, this is the latter rain message. This is the latter rain message. And when it comes, there's a group in Adventism that will not walk therein. They will not hear it. But the latter rain message is based upon returning to the old paths and walking therein. But these old paths, from the beginning in the first generation of Adventism to the fourth generation of Adventism, they're lost sight of. They're forgotten. They're covered up. Sister White defines the rubbish they're covered up with as customs and traditions that are handed down from generation to generation. There's some differences about Miller's history with our history, but we repeat William Miller's history. The difference with Miller, one of the differences of Miller's history is his controversy was with the Protestant churches. But in our history, the Protestant churches in Millerites' history were tested first. They closed their doors in 1842. And then the Millerites themselves were tested at the midnight cry, and their doors closed on October 22nd, 1844. But in our history, it's reversed. Judgment begins with the house of God. Adventism is first tested and then purified at the Sunday law, and then the Protestants outside of Adventism are tested. That part's reversed. So when you're saying that in whatever book you're referring to, the Miller gets separated from the other Protestants, and this produces the group of people the Lord enters into covenant with, this is repeated. But it's repeated in Adventism. There'll be a message that comes to Adventism, and there will be a group that rallies around this message. And they're going to receive the seal of God, but the majority of Adventism is going to turn against this message. They're going to receive the mark of the beast. Those with the seal of God then carry the warning message to those outside of Adventism. It's a repeat of history, but there's a reversal in it. Time to eat? Physical food? We've already prayed, right? Bon appetit.